Hi, Dave Markham here for You A Way of Life. This is our first video after our preview of the interior spiritual life. This is the introduction in the beginning. When I was a young man, I was in the minor seminary intending to become a Roman Catholic priest. Back in those days, you went in out of 8th grade. I didn't. I went in after 10th grade, or after 9th grade into 10th grade. But as a young adolescent, we were expected to engage in certain spiritual practices as we were being groomed and shaped for the priesthood. And one of the concepts at the time was the nurturing and development of our interior spiritual life. Now, at the time, as an adolescent, I didn't quite understand what that was. I know there was a tradition of contemplation and reflection and other spiritual practices, but I was very interested and curious about what an interior spiritual life was, and yet I didn't quite understand the shape, contour, frame of reference, model for what that might be. However, throughout my life, I have always been somewhat of a spiritual seeker, and so having investigated other spiritual paths, I have come to realize that all these explorations really nurtured my interior spiritual life. There is some thought that our development occurs in phases and stages over the human life cycle. And so Nietzsche and others have said that the earlier stages of life, we are preoccupied with what I call the path of the ego. We're looking for a mate, we're looking to procreate, we're looking to find a career or a worldly source of employment in which to support ourselves and our family, and to establish ourselves with hopefully a degree of stability and security on the earth plane. It's not that we aren't having spiritual considerations as we go about doing that, but we're very preoccupied with the householder tasks that need to be achieved in order to establish a successful family life. Sometime in the late 40s or 50s, though, as the old Peggy Lee song, "Is This All There Is?" indicates, we become somewhat disenchanted with the path of the ego, and we look for something more substantial, something deeper. We crave a more existential sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, and we realize that the material things of this world aren't as satisfying as we had thought they might be. So it dawns on us that there must be a better way. When I was a young kid, 10 years old, I came up with a phrase, and I don't know where it came from, but I used to say to myself, it's not a bad life if you know how to live it. Of course, that is a Greek idea. It comes out of Greek philosophy. Socrates said an unexamined life is not worth living. And the Stoic philosophers believed that life was a work of art in progress, and that the happy life, the fulfilled life, is a life of virtue, not for the approval of others or for the material things that leading a virtuous life might bring us, but rather Virtue is a reward in and of itself because it leads to self-respect and self-esteem and peace. Somebody asked the Dalai Lama one time what the purpose of life was, and the Dalai Lama said, happiness. Well, I agree. I think the purpose of life is happiness. However, what the Dalai Lama, at least at that point in time, neglected to say is, what is it that brings us happiness? And of course, that is the question. And in A Course in Miracles, we are taught that basically we have a simple choice, and that is whether to pursue the path of the ego or the path of the spirit. The path of the ego is full of illusions and false promises and fool's gold, and the path of the spirit is full of truth and peace, love, and bliss. And so I call it the dawning. The dawning occurs when we get a feeling of exasperation, sometimes depression, sometimes even suicidal depression. And we come to realize that there must be another way to live our lives. And it's at that point, that dawning on us, that there could be another way, that we enter into the spiritual life, which is the path of the spirit, which involves seeking, and we become searchers. So the first step of the interior spiritual life is what I call the dawning. And the dawning is characterized by a deep-seated conviction that there must be a better way for us to live our lives, and that we commit ourselves to seeking it. Galen Guenrich, who is a senior pastor at All Souls Unitarian Church in New York City, tells the story of being raised as a Mennonite in Pennsylvania, and he goes off to an Ivy League college, and his family and friends in his church congregation are afraid that Galen is going to lose his faith. And Galen says, I think probably with a bemused smile, he didn't lose his faith. He was seeking to find it. What he lost was other people's faith that had been imposed on him. So the first step in the interior spiritual life is the dawning. And the dawning is the awareness that there must be a better way. Till next time. As my friend Don Zimmer says, I'll see you when I see you. Or till next time, it's Dave Markham for UU A Way of Life. And be well.